Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry about that. Welcome. So it's gonna be super exciting today. We're gonna look at a few different things. This week has been absolutely insane. We have the IMLA setup pack that went out on Friday, yesterday. We did a new update to the website. I don't know if you guys saw that. And then we also have the new beta update for RST that went out today. Lots and lots of content that we're busy with RST. Both me, Speed, and Andrew have been slammed, and I know Beldor's been working on the next update. So we're trying to, keep these updates coming for you guys. So we do apologize for it, taking 3 months to get this new RST update out. We had to do a lot of rewrite for it. We're hoping going forward because of the rewrite and the new structure for everything that'll be way quicker to start deploying more updates more and more quickly. It's going to be a lot easier for us to manage with the code. But let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna keep this up pretty simple today. I don't know how long this stream will go. It'll probably, be as long as you guys want to make it. The main reason I want to do this stream is to show you guys the new software. Me kind of point out some things that might be a little bit different from the other builds. And then answer any questions you guys have. Hey, what's up, Mohammed? Welcome, bud. I'm doing well. How are you? And if you guys have any questions or anything, please just stop me in my tracks. We'll do like a live Q&A. I'll try to pause and look at the chat for questions. If you see me looking down here, you can see I have my iPad set up. It's a little bit easier to monitor chat than look at my second monitor over here. Hey, what's up, Cause? How's it going, bud? So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys real quick. So I just want to show you guys how to get to the beta first. A lot of you guys probably already have the beta, but I want to show this. That way, if anyone has questions on their Discord, we can kind of link them to this stream. But I knock, two birds with one stone, live Q&A and kind of like a tutorial video. But first thing I wanted to point out is, again, the IMLA setups. I know I didn't really do a lot of plugs. The IMLA setups, they did go live yesterday. The IMLA pack's going to give you every car that, the 2020 grid supports, and also the Nissan. We figured the Nissan might be good to throw in there because I know a lot of people like the Godzilla. We did have a promo code. Going forward, we are going to have a launch code. It was 50% off for the first 5 customers. We didn't know how many customers to do, so we only did 5, and it went within like a few seconds. So next time we'll make sure it's a little bit bigger, so more of you guys can benefit from it once it gets launched. We'll give you guys some warnings so you guys kind of know when the launch is going to happen. But if you guys haven't checked it out, you can get those at racingsimtools.com/setups. And let us know how they are. We have a setup channel in the Discord. Let us know if you like them, if you don't like them. We like your guys' feedback so we can, make sure that we address those things and consider those things when we're working on the setups. Hey, thanks, Primos. Yeah, it's a little bit different. I don't like that the chat is on the right and my camera is on the left. So that's a little bit getting used to. So if you guys see me going back and forth, that's why. But yeah, I got some cheap Amazon floodlights if you guys aren't tracking to help, fill up the color in the back, the foreground or the background for me. So let's go ahead and talk about the setup, guys. So the new launch, we launched it in the announcement. This is kind of a screenshot of what you guys can expect. Just looking at this screenshot, we can see there's quite a few different things happening, right? We got rid of the race engineer tab. I wasn't super happy with that implementation. There's a lot of things I want to add on in the future, especially now that we've got this huge feature that was kind of in the back of my mind for a while. I really want to have some auto annotations, things that help you guys do the setups and read the data, but the race engineer just wasn't where I wanted it, so we actually removed it. It will be making a reappearance. It'll be new and improved, I promise. But for now it's hidden. So if you've used that, unfortunately the beta, you're not going to have that anymore, but we are going to add it back in. One of the things that you guys will notice is the lap options. We've removed the load save. It's now in here. We still have kind of the same lap tree structure. You can see there's a lot of graphs here. We're gonna expand that in another here in a little bit. And then we also have this data grid here. I know we used to have the data tooltips on the graphs, and I know a lot of people like this format better. And this was a lot better now that you can select many laps. So that's just kind of a quick overview. Let's kind of get into it. We'll go into detailed analysis of how to use this and what all these things mean. So let's get to how you can download the beta. So if you have RST, it's you can still use the production version of RST. It's not gonna affect you if you want to download the beta. Basically, Windows is going to think that the beta is another piece of software. So even though they have the same name and the same icon, they are slightly different, and Windows treats them as separate icons. So you can keep your production code and always have that working version that you're not worried about, crashes and things like that. And you'll still get automatic updates on that version. But if you download the beta version, you'll get this new app called RST Software Beta. It will receive automatic updates anytime we do a beta update. It will receive that update and automatically update. So it's completely separate from production code. So don't be worried if it's going to crash. It's most likely going to crash. We're hoping to get your guys' feedback early on right now, so that we can address these issues and look into these issues, so that when we're ready and we've kind of tested everything, then we can move it to the production version, right? And it's not going to impact you guys. But to get to the install, basically what you need to do is in the RST Discord, and you can't really see it because my stupid webcam, but on the left hand side, there's a channel category called public beta. There's a channel called Beta How To. This is kind of meant to be the channel that kind of tells you guys how to install and gives you the link. Um, so pretty much it's not possible to change the colors yet. It basically automatically adds them. We'll get into some of those details here in a bit though. We are going to be looking into having the user be able to define the colors. But for now they're kind of automatically generated. And Flynn, I'm sorry about that, man. I promise we're going to be coming back with the race engineer very, very soon. We weren't super happy with it, and I don't like doing things like half-assed. I always like, to make sure that we're putting good quality stuff out there. So we're gonna relook at that. We're gonna re-improve it and relaunch it for you guys. Yeah, that's a great question, Uros. Uros asked, do I need to describe with another account, or can I use the beta with my current subscription? The beta points to the same user database. So you do need to have an RST subscription or an ACC license. But if you have that, you can easily use the beta. It's going to go to that database and recognize that you have that license and just allow you to use the beta. But here we can see, so at the in the beta how-to channel, there's a link here at the top. If you click that, that's gonna basically install the installer for the beta. It's just gonna be like an executable that downloads from Windows, and you're just gonna run it. It's gonna be like a wizard, right? So really, really simple. You can pick, this install location and things like that. And then there's just some written instructions that basically tell you those steps, but it's really easy, guys. You just download the installer, you run through the wizard, and then you're good to go. I kind of want to point out some other channels here, though. In the public beta, we have a change log. This is as we do more updates, because now that we got this huge kind of feature rewrite done, we're going to be releasing a lot of beta updates over the next few weeks. Right now the beta only works with ACC. We were really hoping to get all the games supported on the beta today, but I just was super busy with the website and endless setups and everything. So we just have it working with the ACC. My plan is every day this week, I'm going to work on a new game and implement it and roll out a beta update. Again, that'll automatically update for you guys, so you don't have to do anything. It'll just automatically get pulled in. But as I get those games updated, I'll push them. And then if you have that game and you want to try it, you'll be able to pull it from the drop down. But right now, the only thing that you have is ACC. But every time we push a new update for the beta branch, we'll put the change logs in here so you guys can kind of see what's going on. We don't overwrite the beta version change log. We continue to add on to it, unlike the production changelog. And the reason why is I like to see all the updates we've made for the beta, so that when I do the push to production, I can see all of the changes we made in the beta, because you can get lost a little bit quick if you don't keep track of it. Let me look at the chat really quick. Let's see. Blah said, I would really like to use RC for the GT4 cars as well. To be able to do this just as well for the GT cars, we need the basic parameters of the GT cars tool as well. When is this coming? So, Blah, the GT4 cars, you can still use RST with the GT4 cars. I do know that the car parameters are not in the drop-down menu, but that's not preventing you from using the software. You can still go to Google and try to find those things. We do have the data collected. We'll probably be updating the car parameters for this build in the next few days. Again, the goal to get the beta to production is about 3 weeks to a month. So there's going to be a ton of updates in the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So just imagine that's coming, but that shouldn't prevent you. You can still use it. You just have to do a little bit more work to find those car parameters. New type said you were saying on Discord you were going to implement back in the GT4 was yeah, that's correct. New type, basically just what I kind of mentioned. Okay, cool. So that's the changelog. The beta general is really important, guys. You can see there's a lot of chat. This is kind of where it's meant for you guys to use the software and then come in and report any crashes. Say, hey, Zach, this feature that you guys have is kind of funky. Like, it doesn't work the way I would expect it to, right? Or just any kind of concern or comment or question you have on the beta, post it in the beta general. We don't want you guys posting beta related things in the normal like general RST general chat. And the reason why is we want to make sure that any comments or questions are being addressed from the beta, and sometimes they can get lost in the typical general chat. I check this Discord channel like every day when we're doing beta testing. So if you can post any feedback, any comment, good, bad, whatever, even good feedback's good for us sometimes because it kind of helps us figure out if the things that we had in mind when we did those functions were correct. So good, bad, whatever, any kind of comment post in there. And then one thing too is we'll be going through here and kind of commenting with you guys. So this will be a pretty interactive. But that's the Discord guide. That's how you can download the beta. Look at the changelog and then give us feedback for it. Let's get into the actual software, which I know you guys are very very excited to look at. So let me see. Isn't the 1 second, guys? Trying to figure out why this. Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. Let me just format this window real quick. Screen quality. Cool. So this is the beta, guys. You can see it looks a little bit different, for the most part, looks pretty similar to the other RC. The data grid here looks a little different, but pretty much everything else is the same. So first thing I'm going to show you guys is I'm going to come to select the game, and you can see, like I said, right now the beta only works with ACC. So the only option I have, even though as a developer I should have every access to everything in this drop down menu, I only have ACC. Again, as I do the updates, you'll see more and more times as you come in here, you'll see other games pop up. But right now, only ACC. So we're gonna go ahead and select that. Mohammed, it's in the Discord. At the bottom, it's called public beta. You just go to that and you'll find the link. Oh, you're actually asking how do you get to the Discord server? If you go to racingsimtools.com, you'll see our website. In the top right of the header of the website, you'll see like icons for YouTube, Discord, and everything. If you click that Discord icon, it'll take you to our Discord. Hey, Flint, we do have that option. If you actually go to File, Preferences, there's an option that actually we remove it. We're gonna add it back in before the production version. That it basically saves your last selected game, and you can just launch it with that. It's a toggle, so you can turn it off if you don't like it. But we did have that in the last beta build. We did have to revert the beta build to redo the architecture, so the car parameters for the GT4 and the auto start got wiped, but that will be getting added back in. But you can see after I selected ACC, it's waiting for data. So, just like the other RST, I could go in, have the app open, leave it open, get laps. And as I do laps, I'll start to see those in the lap tree here. I actually don't have ACC installed right now. I got a new M2 drive yesterday because I only had 100 gigabyte SSD. So I reinstalled Windows. So I'm configuring things, but we can look at some data here. So I do have the data for our IMLA setups. So anytime we do the setups, we do, full validation of the setups. We do data collection. We check the tire wear, things like that. So I'm just going to go to the load. RST setups is our shared drive. And then let's look at, something like the Mercedes AMG Evo. Gonna load this lap in, and then also let's look at let's do the McLaren. I think these two will be interesting to kind of show you guys some things because they work at different parts of the track better than the other, which is kind of cool. So, just like RST, the data is going to populate in the lap tree. I'm going to have, checkboxes for selects, checkboxes for baselines, lap time, lap number, and the delete. One thing that is different, and I really want to point it out, is on the old RST, when you wanted to save a lap, the save icon used to be up here next to the load icon. And when you clicked it, it would save whatever lap that was the selected lap, right? This first checkbox, whatever checkbox was selected, it would save that full session. Because now you guys can select mini laps that no longer worked. So what we've done is we moved the save session to inside the lap tree. So if I were to click this save session icon for this lap, it would go ahead and save this entire session and all this data. We are going to look into allowing you guys to select just whatever you have selected in here. We didn't have enough time to look at it yet. That's probably going to be a future update, but that is going to be considered and something to be improved. But right now you can save the whole session just by clicking this icon. Murph said, any news for the updated manual? I can imagine a lot of work needs to be done with the new build. Yeah, so Beldor's actually been working on the new manual update. I really do apologize. The manual update was probably like 3 or 4 updates behind. Beldor just got really busy. I know COVID like really affected him and his work and his family. He is working on the new manual update. I know he is hoping to get something by the end of this month out. But I'm gonna try to do more videos with the setup. So I know there's a big gap between the manual and the actual version of RST. We are gonna have something by the end of this month, but I'll try to do more videos to kind of help you guys because I know it's a big gap. But yeah, the save that's a little different is the save session. So let's get into the actual behaviors now. So you know, like when I click a lap here, right now you can see these things. There's nothing here, right? Car speed's blank, throttle's blank, brake is blank. But now I can select a session just like I used to. When I click it, you're gonna see some data here. Let me zoom out real quick. When I do that, you can see we have the full lap here. I can use this cursor bar. It's going to update the mini map position and the values in the lap tree over here. So pretty much nothing new there. The new thing is the data tree now pulls in whatever laps you have selected. And it also shows you the color of the lap that's being graphed right now. So you can see I only have one lap selected on this front wheel slip. I have a red and blue. Well, it's because we showed the left and right tires on the front. Not just one axle. So I see 2 graphs here. And as I move this cursor, you can see those values are updating. Carbon said, "How you, man? Question: Is there could be an easy way to share your own driving data with another person, just like the database view, just between you?" Yeah, Carbon. So if you save this session, it'll create what's called a .lap file, and then you can send that lap file to someone else, and they can load it in, just like I showed you guys here with the video. So that's how you can share the files. We are looking at like a team database, kind of like the Nails database, but where you could like create a team and other RST members you could hook them up to so they could go in there and download. That's probably going to be a few updates away, but that is a good question. But yeah, for now you can just manually share that lap file. So let's look at the other way. So I can also still select a baseline lap, and baseline lap is basically the way I like to consider it and think about it is the baseline is what you're comparing everything else to. So in these, graphs, they're not really going to be a difference. In the old RST, when you did a baseline, you would see a lap compared to your lap in the driver development side, right? So when you selected a baseline lap and a selected lap, when you would go to the time slip graph, you would see where you were losing time against that baseline lap. Same kind of principle here. I can select the baseline lap here. You can see in the data tree, I now have 2 colors, 2 entries for all these things. And one thing is, if you don't like seeing all this data, like let's say you're only curious in wheel slip, you can collapse these tables, and now you can only see wheel slip. So that's kind of just a nice little feature to help with the user experience. But as you can see, as this lap has been added, I now have a B. So what that B is supposed to designate is the baseline lap. So if I remove it, you can see now I just have that first lap. Add it back, I have that baseline lap. And where I like to use this is because now that you can select the mini laps, if I come in here and say I select a whole bunch of laps, and it's kind of hard when you're zoomed out like this. So let's say I wanted to look into this left-hander. I wanted to look at the data specifically for this section only, right? So what I can do is let's really zoom in here. So this is pretty much the corner entry, mid corner exit for that left-hander, fast speed left-hander at Imola. I have many laps here selected. Well, sometimes it's kind of hard to see what session, what lap, okay, lap 4. Oh, here I am. I want to just select the fast lap and then compare everything else to that. Well, that B really stands out, right? So I can say, oh, the baseline's the purple. Okay, how did the value other graphs change, based on that? And then once I look at the color, then I can go and look, oh, that was session 1 or lap 5 or, whatever. But yeah, that's why I, even if you still can select as many laps as you want. Now I could do this, right? I can still select all laps and it's still going to add that graph, but it just becomes a little bit harder to read the data table here and figure out which is which. So I would still encourage you guys to select baseline laps, when you're curious about comparing other things to you. So one thing that you guys can see is, performance is, not too bad with 5 laps here. 1 lap for one graph. So one signal per graph is usually about 10,000 data points being rendered. So it's a pretty big taxing thing. So now that you can imagine, now that we're graphing basically, five, laps here, we're rendering about 50,000 points per graph, and we have 4 graphs here. So we're rendering 100,000 data points. So that's definitely going to impact performance, right? So that's something to be cautious of. You can technically graph as many points as you want, and if I wanted to go through here and select everything in this data grid, I totally could. But you just have to remember, every time you select a lap, you're adding that many more data points to be rendered by your GPU. And, there is some, it's not the same as rendering like graphics, like 3D rendering. Data points, when you're rendering this many data points, it can definitely hit impact. So just be careful of that. Typically, if you have more than like 3 laps in here, you can see how like messy this is already getting. Like this is a lot of data here. So, already at 3 laps, it's hard to read. You're probably not going to want to select more than 3. I know Speed Demon, I forget what graphics card he has. I think he has the old 1000 series cards. He said he could do about 5 laps before performance. I can do about 10, but again, I'm on a 3090, so I get a little bit better performance. But yeah, just be smart, right? Don't be an idiot and select like 30 laps and expect the app to be, real time rendering. So just keep that in mind. One thing I do want to show is, I know some people, have this question. Let's say we had this lap, and I have 2 different cars here, but let's say I went back to the pits, I did a setup change, and then I wanted to, compare the differences, right? So I would have a different session. My data wouldn't be in that one session. What I could do is I can still come in here and select the data from this other. So this is a different car, but if this was the same car but a different setup, this is a really good way to come in here and compare the differences between setups, right? So let me read the questions real quick. Sorry, it's kind of hard to talk and look at the camera, then also read the chat here. So I'm just gonna kind of pause every now and then to read the chat. So Robert said, is the baseline lap going to be the standard feature for every track? So the baseline lap is just a selection. When you save, Robert, it's still gonna save a .lap file. And you'll have all your laps in there. So the baseline lap and the selected lap's not really any different. It's really just a way to discern in the data tree like what's being looked at, and it's also important for the driver run laps, which I don't want to talk about now. I want to get there because there's a logical kind of the progression to get to that kind of point I want to make. But when you do the driver lap, if you have the baseline lap, any lap that you select like with that will show you where you're losing time compared to that one lap. So before we time slip, you could only see it for one lap and one baseline lap. Now you can have one baseline lap for many laps, which is really cool because you can see consistently where you're losing time, right? Um, so it's a cool feature. And Flint said 5700 XE doesn't like 7. Had to try it. Yeah, it's definitely, you just got to be smart, right? It's just a lot of people, they think, oh, graphing's not heavy hit on your GPU. And it's kind of true to a certain point, but when you get to a lot of data like we're trying to render here with RST, it is a lot of data. We're going to continue to look at improvements that we can make. Obviously, performance is always something that we're trying to improve. But yeah, it is a lot of data that you really consider what's being rendered by the GPU. So Flynn said, "Is there an option to change the lap time text that's on the left? Hard to read it on a 4K mount." So that is a good question. Short answer is no. All the text doesn't isn't scaling properly with Windows scaling option, which is important if you have a 4K monitor or you're using the Windows scaling option. We're gonna implement going forward a scaling option within the settings menu, but right now it's not. So I do apologize for that. What WPF is supposed to work with Windows scaling, but for some reason on the .NET 4.6.2 with this version, we're not seeing that. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But it's something that we're tracking, so it's definitely on the radar to making adjustments for. So that's pretty much the differential. I do want to show you some of these other laps. Stability. You're gonna have same kind of data here. Again, you get into these a lot of data here once you start adding multiple laps here. I only have two here. So I'm just going to deselect these. Let's go ahead and make like a real, assumption here. So let's say we're comparing, lap 8 of these two cars, the Mercedes at a 42.2, the Mercedes at a 42.1. So we'll make the McLaren the baseline and the Mercedes the selected lap. But you can see we could just go through here. All the typical, RST data channels that we have are here. You can scale, navigate, and just the way you would, right? So no difference there at all. All these graphs are the same. You will see that the data channels do change here. Again, you can hide them if you want. They update as you move, and that's true for any of these channels. So if I was curious, what was the high speed dampening on this left hand turn, to zoom into them, then I could look at the suspension velocities or whatever. Let's look at some graphs that are different now. So one is the damper histograms. So before, when you selected the dampener histograms, you could only show one graph. So you would have something that looked like this, right? And you would make a setup adjustment and you would see how it would change. Now that we have the ability to load as many laps as you guys want, you can also overlay those changes on the damper histograms just like you can in Motec. So if I select here, let's go select this one again. You can see the original Mercedes dampener histograms like that. When I check the McLaren, they're the blue, and you can see the differences. Again, normally you wouldn't be comparing two different cars, but you would be comparing setup adjustments. So the deltas between these would be a lot smaller, but it's good to see if you make a rebound adjustment or high speed adjustment, how that's affecting and what velocities you're seeing that change mostly in. So you could do it as many laps as you want here. Um, the comparison view, I like it for one lap selections. It's a little easier to read. Once you get into multiple laps, it becomes harder to read. I kind of find myself using the normal view once I'm comparing multiple setups. But yeah, that's pretty much it. FFT, same thing. You can have multiple laps now, which is cool. The lateral stiffness distribution is just like the other graphs basically. Pitch and roll gradients is cool. This you can see like overlaying two differences. I want to show you like typically with a game you would select like the first lap and compare it to the last lap, and you would see how the pitch and roll gradients are changing as the fuel is coming out and as you get later into the stints. You can see there is a small change here in the slope of these graphs, and especially in the pitch gradient, right? The later in the lap, you can see we're getting a little bit lower here. The roll gradients are slightly changing. At the start of the lap, we had 0.518. At the end of the lap, it went down to 0.503. And you have to think the reason why that's happening is as fuel comes out, the sprung mass gets lighter, but our stiffness stays the same, right? So the springs aren't storing as much energy because there's not as much mass on the car now. So the overall effect is those roll gradients come down and the car feels a little bit more responsive, right? So kind of cool. You can do it for that. You can compare, different ARBs, see how the roll gradients, and you can overlay those results now rather than just looking at the roll grids and see how they're changing. So again, pretty nice. So a lot of this It doesn't seem like we have a lot of new features, and that's true. We don't have a lot of new features, but the thing that the big thing with this update is you guys can select as many laps as you guys want, and you can overlay those results on all these graphs. That's why it took us so long. We basically had to rewrite all the code for how these graphs are generated and RST, but it adds a lot of value. I think as you guys play with it, you'll see how awesome it is to be able to come in here and make these adjustments. This is two different cars, but this is kind of something that you would see if you made like a front spring adjustment, right? You would have two different roll gradients here. So again, just kind of cool. Traction circle. This used to have colors that denoted like how much downforce was being measured. Now it's the color of the lamp. So if I, click here, you can see you could compare how the traction circle compares different setup adjustments. Let's go to gearing. Gearing, only thing new is now when you do the histograms, RPM histograms, you have the two laps, slightly graphed next to each other. The time spent, this will only show you the last selection you made. So there's really not a good way to do a pie graph for multiple selections. We thought about maybe generating a new pie graph for every graph, every lap you selected, but it would just get really small and hard to read. So right now it just works with whatever your last selection is. It's going to show you that pie. So just something to kind of be on the lookout. Engine RPM curve or the power curve isn't populated right now just because this is not supported by ACC. It will be supported by Project Cars 2, but right now we don't have anything. RPM histogram, again, same thing, but you see the two different laps here, which is kind of cool. And then theoretical RPM, again, you see the same data, two different laps. So you can see the after turn 2 at IMLA, these cars have two different speeds, but the RPM difference is like 500 RPM, so pretty big difference here. But you can't really change the gearing in ACC, so really not much to do in this lap part of the graph. Arrow, same graphs, nothing's changed much here other than the fact that you can now compare these two these two different as many laps as you want. It's really nice when you're looking at downforce. You can see how downforce is changing. So you can see right here, on average this blue line is slightly above. Let's get a little more zoomed in. You can see how this blue line is slightly more above the red line on average. And also, so not with the green line. So if you look at the the baseline lap, it should be red and blue, and then green and yellow. So green and yellow is the Mercedes here, and the McLaren is the red and blue. And you can see there's a little bit of difference in ride height. The McLaren likes to be really at this ride height. Let's look at the downforce. If you were to look at the same thing with the downforce, let's look. So the Mercedes is the red and the blue, and the McLaren is the green and the yellow. So you can see the McLaren produces more downforce on the front axle than the Mercedes is here. So normally you would have two different setup. You would have the same car, two different setups, and you could see, hey, if I add a little bit more rake, am I getting a little bit more downforce? And compare those results, right? So again, really, really nice feature. And you can see, as a setup adjustments, how that rake is changing. Now let me look at the chat real quick. Be interested to see differences in graphs in the same car, but do one session dry, one session in the wet. Yeah, Murph, you can totally do that with this. That's typically the use case when you're comparing these setups. I don't have data because I did that reinstall of Windows. I don't have data for the same car with different setups. I only have the RST data validation we did for the IMLA setup. So I'm comparing two different cars, but you are right. Typically you'd have the same car, maybe two different setups, or maybe you compare that same setup in wet and dry conditions. But the thing is with RST, now that you can select as many laps as you guys want, you can totally do that. You can pretty much do any analysis you want. Again, RST is really powerful because it gives you guys those math channels. Meltech, you have to know the math. You kind of have to understand how the raw data can be formatted in a way that you can use with RST. RST gives you that math channel. So now there's, very little differences between Motec and RST. There's still a little bit more flexibility with Motec. I do understand that. But RST gives you those math channels, so it makes it a little bit more accessible to sim racers. So a little bit different, but hopefully we're narrowing that functionality gap so you guys can do these comparisons. Flint said, under handling, it's sometimes confusing when the drop menu options orders changes. I believe it's better to keep that order. So Flint, it doesn't actually change the order. I do know what you're talking about. And with a WPF app, this is actually Microsoft. when you select something, so if I were to select downforce efficiency, you can see basically it moves that selection up, and it removes it basically. So I had downforce, but you can still see right height envelope and right height are still in the same order. That's because it's not changing the order, it's just removing that option that you just selected to the top. So it's like removing an option. So I do know what you're talking about. It's not reordering it, but unfortunately, I have looked into it. There's not a way for you to change that behavior without defining a completely new dropdown. We're using the WPF dropdowns. So unfortunately, that probably isn't going to get changed anytime soon. But I do know what you're talking about, and maybe eventually we will. Robert said, are your setups also going to have data files for a lab? So very good question. So right now, we don't want to step on Nils's database, right? We added in RST the functionality for users to download Nils data. He has setups, but the whole reason for the setup is to allow users to have the same car as what he did for the data, so that there's no differences between what he's done and what you can go do for comparison purposes. He's not really making those setups to say, hey, this setup's really good, this is going to give you an edge, right? I know some people do use his setups in that way because they do find them better than the setups that they could do. But his setups, they're nowhere near optimized, and it's not, there's nothing bad against Nils. He just doesn't put the time into it because that's not his focus, right? He can 100% come up with a good setup. It's not his ability. It's just the fact that it's not what his priority is. His priority is to get the data for you guys to use. Um, and because of that, our focus with the RC setups is to provide you guys a really good baseline. So we're spending hours and hours and hours on each setup to give you guys a 90% optimized solution. That's still that 10% for you to kind of make tailor, and we give you that infograph to tailor, and you come into RSC and you can kind of make those adjustments. But our focus is providing you guys a good baseline setup. We don't want to give you guys the data for that setup because we feel like that would kind of step on Nils's toes a little bit. We're nowhere near as fast as Nils. So there's really no comparison there. His data is still going to be better, right? But we don't want to step on, kind of his domain. So we are recording data for our purposes to validate our setups to make sure, like, things that we expect the setup to do, that we're hitting those marks. We are saving those and we are archiving those. That being said, if anything ever happened with Nils, like, he wanted to go, maybe work on another software solution and he no longer want to work with RST or something like that, we probably most likely would then upload the data after removing Nils data out of our database. But for now, no plans. Nils's data is going to be in there, and we're not going to offer our data because we don't want to step on his toes. So, it's important to kind of keep those business relationships. And me and Nils have worked really well together, and we want to keep it that way. Any download options for alien like skills? Not yet. Hopefully someday. But yeah, let's get back to the RST. Going through the new software. I know you guys still want to see some of these features, and there's still some features I really kind of want to point out. But let's go to the ride height envelope. Again, ride height envelope's really nice. You can see, multiple laps, how that's going to change. So you could make adjustments to a setup, see how the ride height envelope changes. Temps, pretty much nothing new here. Still gonna basically see the standard temps that you normally see. But now you have the ability to select mini laps, engine temps, environment, same thing. You can see these setups. We try to replicate the same conditions when we do the setup. So even though these are two different cars, two different sessions, we had pretty much the same track and ambient temp. So let's get to track. Oh wait, there's nothing for track. So that is planned right now, guys. So I wanted to make a point to kind of show you this. The track is not populating because the track is using WPF's C# drawing classes. And we think there's a lot more performance if we use SideChart. SideChart's our new rendering library that we use for a lot of our graphs. They have written some really low-level code for us to utilize to get some really good performance. We've consulted with their support. We've paid like $1,000 to get extra support from them, and they recommended us using their XY plot to render the track maps. So right now the beta doesn't have track maps. We're gonna update the track maps to basically give you guys the same functionality, but using SideChart, which will really speed up the performance for you guys. But for now, it didn't make it, so it's not going to populate. So if you come in here, you look at track map, and there's just nothing. That's what's going on. It's not a bug. It's, you don't need to report it. We are going to add it, but it's just going to be another fairly big update. That's probably going to be another week or two out. But I just wanted to kind of point that out. Earl said, "Is there a possibility that the fastest lap could be different color in the laps chart?" Yeah, Earl, that's a good question. We did see a request for that in the feature request issue tracker that we have at RST. We did have the easiest way would to be change the text color or something based on the fastest lap, right? I have code in there. I will probably try to get that in this beta. I think that would be a really easy feature to add. So be looking out for that in the changelog for the beta in the next few days. The next few days, I'm really gonna be focusing on the game, but I might be able to sneak it in there. But if I don't make it in the next few days from that, definitely after the games get added, we'll add that in. So let's get to run graphs. So this is something new that I think is really, really cool. That you guys I think will find a lot of value in. So before run graphs, run graphs, the difference between a run graph and a normal graph is a normal graph that shows you the data for that one selected lap that you have, right? And now you can show like multiple laps, but it's still a lap. Like the time frame is only one lap, right? Um, when you have a run graph, what you're doing is you're looking at how behaviors are changing over many laps. And you want to show that in one graph. You don't want to have to select many laps. So what a run graph is kind of shows you how things change over a stint. So it's really good for looking at things like how much grip the car is producing, what tire temperatures you're seeing, what's the fuel usage, things like that. So there's one really cool thing is now that you can select many laps, you can do a lot of good comparisons. So let's say for here, we want to, let's say we had the same setup or the same car, but different setups, right? We could come in here, we could see, oh, you could, how the setup is changing with stints. And we could say, oh, on average, this lap gave us, this much more grip. You can see here, the Mercedes and McLaren are pretty close to one another. Maybe a little bit at the, second half of the stint, the Mercedes is a little bit more grip than the McLaren is, but on average, they're pretty close, right? Let's load another car. Let's see. I know one car that will be really bad. Let's come into RST setups, Imola, and let's load in the BMW. Dun dun dun. Arguably, probably the worst car to Imola, but you didn't hear it from me. Boom. So let's load. So we just loaded in the BMW, which is this bottom graph. One thing you will note is I am going to be looking at this. It's kind of annoying me, but I don't really know of a way to fix it right now. Is when you select the lap, it kind of generates a new color because we want you guys to have the ability to select as many laps as you want. Sometimes it gives you colors that are kind of similar, which I got to figure out a better way to prevent that. They are different. It's doing a random color every time, but this is really, really close. That being said, this for sure is the BMW. If you get colors that are close and you're not sure, just select it and unselect it. You can see, this is the one that's changing. I'm going to be looking at a ways to fix. I just don't really have a good idea yet. But you can see the Nissan was worse than the BMW. Actually, Voodoo, we were actually able with the RC setup. We actually were able to get the Nissan a little bit up. I don't know what it did in terms of grip, but the pace wasn't bad. I don't know if it's got a good BOP or what. But let me kind of make this a little bit bigger here. So, but you can see this is a really good comparison for BOP testing, right? This BMW is so much lower in total grip than the McLaren and Mercedes. So if I were to go to a special event, I probably wouldn't drive the BMW, to be honest, right? I'd probably drive one of these two cars. Granted, there are going to be differences. It's not about just total grip, right? There's things in like, the BOP and things like that. But the idea is you can use these things to kind of identify differences. This is also really good if you're trying to identify changes in setup, right? You want to see, increases in grip. Grip is going to kind of correlate to lap time. The more lateral acceleration you can pull through a corner, that means you're pulling more speed through that corner. The more speed you're going through corners at, the better the lap time, right? So it's a really strong correlation with lap time. And you can actually see that in the up right here. It's going to add the lap time average for that stint for the selection you've made, what the standard deviation is, which is kind of like you can think that as lap time consistency. The higher the standard deviation, the less consistent you are. That lower that standard deviation, the more consistent you are. And then you can see the session and the baseline. So you can see that baseline. You can see the BMW, which is session 3 here. It did a 42.9. The McLaren or the Mercedes did a 42.2, and the McLaren did a 42.3. So kind of like I said, right here, if we look at that, the the Mercedes is on top, McLaren's right under that, and the BMW is under there. So there is a pretty good correlation with time there. So again, total grip really helps you. Use this for BOP, trying to figure out what car you want to do for an event, or use it to help you, see if you're getting more and more grip out of a setup. And also, not if it's just helping you with pace, but how that is affecting your consistency as well. All those graphs are going to be like that. So if I come into understeer angle, you're going to see we have different laps here. So you can see this the BMW setup's got a little bit more understeer than the Mercedes and McLaren setup. Again, we did that because the BMW doesn't produce a lot of rear downforce, so it wants to get really sketchy on you. So we added understeer into the setup on purpose to help balance that lack of rear arrow. One thing that's really new, and I want to really kind of show it to you guys. But let me pause this. I know there's some questions, so let me read through the question. Hey, what's up, video? How's it going, man? Uh, Flynn said, "Can the tick reflect the line's data color?" So that is a good question, and we actually had a really good debate about that in the RST Discord, but amongst the developers. The reason we didn't do that is you have to think some laps, a lap, or some graphs, a lap is showing you one line, right? So it's like a red line. So we could, if in that case, you could easily have the checkbox be red for that selection or whatever, right? The problem is when you have graphs that show multiple lines per selected lap. So a good example of this is the dampener speeds. That one graph for one selection show you 4 lines for that one lap, right? Because we show you all the tires in that one graph for selected lap. So the question is, what do you do for that? Do you have a checkbox that has 4 different colors in it, or like, what do you do? So we weren't sure what to do, so we just left it the way it was right now. Not saying that's always going to be the case, but for now, that's kind of what we were thinking when we thought about that. So we're not sure what the best path forward is. Maybe there's some other way not to kind of correlate them and it's not by color. We'll continue to look into that. If you guys have any questions or any suggestions or anything, let us know in the beta channel. That's one of those things that we're like kind of on the fence on, and we kind of be interested to see you guys' feedback to figure out which way we wanted to go with it. John said, I have a question. Can this content app you created work with different sims such as R Factor 2, AMS? Yeah, John. So we support ACC, AC, AMS 2, Project Cars 2, and Dirt Rally 2, and iRacing, if I didn't say that one already. Sorry. So those are all the games that we support right now. Right now, the beta only works with ACC. We already have all the code for the other games. I just have to convert it to the new architecture, and it's pretty minor. I just didn't have enough time because of all other adjustments that we were making this week. But yeah, we normally do support all those games. If you get the license for RST now and you download the production version, you could technically use it with any game that we support. John, the only game that we don't support that's mainstream right now is RF2. The reason we don't support RF2 is they don't have a native data output, option for the game. There's not, most games have shared telemetry or shared memory, or they have UDP, which goes out over your network, so that I can develop, to read that data stream and then do things in RST with it. RF2 doesn't have one. What they do is allow you to build plugins. So what people have done is built plugins that get data from the engine and then send it out over shared memory or UDP. However, those are not available for commercial use. So because RST, we do charge a monthly fee to help support our developers. Andrew, Speed, Veldor, they're working around the clock. There's no way I could ask them to help with me the way they do unless I was giving them the sell money that we make through the subscriptions. And because of that, I'm not allowed to use those plugins legally. So it means I have to develop one. And there's a lot of things in RST and the setups and stuff that we want to do right now, not necessarily work on a plugin for one specific game that we're not sure how many people would actually want to use. So that's the reason we don't support RF2. I'm not saying we'll never support it in the future, but that's just the reason we don't support it now. Voodoo said, "Were you able to add something cool from the new data channel Kunos included in the last updates?" No, Voodoo. Pretty much all they added was like weather stuff, which I don't really. I mean, we could add it to the environmental, like stuff, but to me, it doesn't really seem like it would be much of value to add. I have a request with Kunos to add like a few things that are in the Motec, like the bump stop engagement channel. We don't have that in shared memory, so hopefully they'll add to the shared memory. But there just wasn't really anything that I found of value in the new shared memory structure. So we just reading what we've currently have. But let's get back to the demo. I want to show you guys something that's really cool with fuel that I don't know if everyone knows. So, we have fuel versus time, which it kind of tries to show you, is there a correlation between fuel wear usage and time, right? We don't really see one here because we have, so many cars selected. There's a lot of variation here. Sometimes you will see there's a decrease in lap time as you burn fuel. Sometimes not. And the reason why is sometimes you wear the tire wear equals out the fuel, the mass that you lose from the fuel consumption. So the lap time kind of stays consistent. So this is kind of a cool way to see like if tire wear is more of being a factor or if fuel is more of a factor. But one thing I want to show you is the fuel calculator. So if you come into RC and you just click on fuel, you're gonna see you saw this before. We used to have like a line and it basically just shows you where your fuel was at and per each lap. So you can see at the start these all don't start at the same point, and the reason why is the Mercedes doesn't have as much fuel. The fuel tank is I think it's 115 or maybe 116 listed here at Imola. The other cars have 120. So you can see there is a difference here, which is pretty cool. But the big thing that's really important is the slope of this line, right? The slope of this line is basically saying how much fuel are you burning per lap. Again, the bottom is, lap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. So you can see there's a linear drop in the fuel quantity, which means there's a burn right here. If you look on the right here, you can see this is going to calculate the slope of this line, and we're going to show you the burn rate over here in the data grid. So it's kind of cool to see, our setup adjustments making a difference in the fuel burn rate. What fuel maps, am I losing too much time? How much am I actually saving in fuel burn rate? Things like that. The one thing I don't think a lot of people know about that I do want to show is the fuel calculator. And I will be honest, I'm going to give out a shout out to Andrew. He's our newest developer at RST. His name is Landis on Discord. I'm actually real life friends with him. Me and him used to work together. That's actually how I got, a hold of him. I thought we were just going to remove this functionality because, it kind of works on a lap. You'd want to calculate on one lap. He was the man with this new update, and he made it work with everything that's in here. So let's say I, had a few different setups, and I wanted to calculate the fuel, like how much I needed for, 65 minutes or a full stint, or maybe I was comparing two different cars like I am here. Let's say I had 3 cars. Wasn't sure what I wanted to use for the stint. They all kind of felt good. Wasn't sure which one I wanted to use their event, but I wanted to see, can these cars, they extend? Can they go the full max stint distance, right? Maybe one car can and the other ones can't. That might be my deciding factor. I want to use that car, right? I can extend, I can go longer, get an advantage in the strategy. What you can do is you can come in here and select, your race length. So I'm just going to say 1 hour. And let's do 65 minutes. And I look at here, you can see I'm going to get the fuel needed. So this is going to be the fuel needed in liters. So it takes into account the average lap time that you've done through your entire stint and that burn rate to calculate how much fuel is needed. So you can see for 1 hour and 65 minutes in the Mercedes, I'm going to need 123 liters. Well, that might be an issue because remember, we only had in the Mercedes, we only had a 115-liter tank. If I need 123 liters and I only have a 115-liter tank, I'm not gonna make it 65 minutes, right? I'm gonna make it, let's see, probably right around 60 minutes. So I'm not going to be able to extend that 5 minutes. Whereas, the McLaren and the BMW, I'm easily able to hit that because they have 120-liter tanks. Let's say, hey, can I get 70 minutes out of the max stint time? 113. It says I can do it. So this is a really cool functionality you guys can use. If you are not using time and you're using laps, you can click on laps. It's going to change that to the number of laps. And now instead of looking at time, it's a lap calculator. So, I can come in here and say, hey, I think I'm going to do, 34 laps per stint. How much fuel am I going to need? Okay, here you go. So really cool function. Again, it works for all the different setups. So it's pretty cool. John said that might change given RFactor 2 has been bought out. Yeah, I would hope if they give us a default data output where we don't need to code our own plugin, I will for sure add it. That is definitely something that would be easy for us to do. Total race link doesn't allow 24 hours, set at 2350. You also can you add a text file for race length? Yeah, that's actually a good question. Flint, right now the fuel calculation is kind of dumb. It just uses the lap time average that you see here, calculates the burn rate and figures out from that. So it does if you do a refuel, so you in the stint and it like goes back up, it kind of gets messed up. It doesn't have a thing for a formulation lap. Usually for formulation lap and things, what I do is I just do, if I am doing 65 minutes, I'll do an extra 2 laps. So Imola is like a 2 minute lap, so 4 more minutes. So I'll do like a 69 minutes, and that will account and give me kind of a buffer room. But you're right, there's probably some things that we can add to make it a little bit smarter than what it is now. Voodoo said I was expecting a very slight decrease in fuel per lap as the overall weight of the car decreased. Yeah, you would expect that, Voodoo, but actually we don't really see that too much in the data, which is kind of surprising. That's map 1 in the Merc, I suppose. We also went 90 minutes instantly with map 2. We could be, yeah, that's actually, so that Voodoo, that's a really good point. Why you could use this graph is now with the ability to select, different sessions. You could do one session in lap 1, one session in lap 2, compare the difference in time compared to the differences in burn rate, and do that evaluation. Does it make sense to lose that time for that much more fuel, right? So again, it's giving you guys the tools to make those analyses possible so that you guys can have the best judgment or decisions when you go into a race. Flynn said, is this fuel use and average lap time can be one click copy to strategy part? So I don't think it does. I'll have to look into that, Flint. That's actually a good idea. But that's the fuel. I just wanted to point that out. Again, all these other run graphs work the exact same. They basically just allow you to select many different laps here. So let's get to the driver stuff, because this is a little bit different, and I really want to show the time slip stuff off, which I think is really, really cool. So let's go to driver. All these things that we've shown in RST, pretty much 75% of RST is for developing a setup, right? So it's looking at data to help you get an idea about the setup. We didn't spend a lot of time on driver develop. That being said, we recently spent a whole lot of time. So the last update before this, we spent like a lot of time. I think we got like 80 new graphs in or something ridiculous like that for just driver development. So if you come in here, it looks pretty much like the other RST did. You select a lap, you select a baseline, and you can look at the differences between speed, throttle, lateral acceleration, throttle, all these different options to look at, right, for all driver development. And if you guys have any questions about these graphs, just let me know in the Discord. I'll try to explain to them. But again, it's all just for driver development. One thing that is new, though, is if we go to overview, you can see at the top, I see the time slip will only show if you have a baseline selection in the lap tree. So before, you used to always have to have a baseline selection, but because you had to have a baseline selection, you always had to have, you could only have one selected lap and one baseline lap, right? So you would see the difference between your data. So if I, click on this as the baseline lap, I'd say, oh, I lost a lot of time on lap 2 and, turn 1, that like tight hairpin, but I gained a lot of time back after that tight hairpin and, the sector 2, sector 3, right? So this would help you identify, why did I lose time? Oh, look at this mid corner speed. I'm losing so much mid corner speed. I probably got on the throttle late, or, things like that. And there's a whole bunch of analysis you could do with that. But the thing is, the time slip graph, right, kind of helps you identify where you're losing time. Well, sometimes you want to look at multiple laps, right? And you don't want to just click this and then come in here and then click, oh, and then try to figure out, like, did I lose the same amount of time in multiple places? Well, what you can do now is let's come to the Mercedes. Let's sort this by lap time. Let's see, the best lap I had was a 41.2. So I'm going to select that. And then let's select some laps in the middle here. That's like my average pace, right? Or I should say this is Speed Demon's average pace. I can click this. I can see where I lost time. Let's click multiple laps here. Ooh, so this is all new, right? So now I have multiple laps here. And this is really, really strong because now I can go, oh, like, pretty much every lap, I'm losing time in turn one. Like, it's not something I just did on one selected lap and I saw. I'm consistently making this mistake, right? So maybe I should go focus on practicing on this, right? If you're trying to improve your consistency. Same thing here. Maybe I looked at this data and said, oh, I lost a little bit of time here. Am I consistently losing time there? Oh, on average, no. Like typically I'm doing well. Maybe that was just a bad lap I, messed up on. So this is really nice because before it was an idea to get a way to, help you with raw pace, right? You could look at it, you could compare yourself to Niels, you say, "Oh, I'm losing this time here," right? But it wasn't really a good way to look at your consistency. Am I consistently making that mistake? Now, because you can select as many laps as you want, you can do that, which is so like it's really really nice. That being said, all your data is still going to be in here for these other graphs. So, throttle, all these graphs, all that data that you have here. Pretty much all that's the same. Time slip again. Time slip is the same thing as the last graph we looked at, but it's at the bottom, and we also include the time slip rate, which is the rate at which you're losing time in the time slip. So it's just just a really cool way. But this is really really powerful. And this is something I really wanted to show you. One thing that it is also really cool for is not just looking at your time, right? Let's say you're maybe AOR or maybe you're RWB, and you're curious, like, what's the balance between these cars without any added ballast, right? Or maybe I'm trying to figure out, like, what car do I want to, use, in this track. And IMLA track position is really important. So, do I care about, maybe being slower in the corners to gain time on the final straight because that might be my only opportunity to pass? Those kind of questions are things you really need to consider, right? And there really isn't a way to, quantify that other than just doing laps and kind of going by what you have as a gut feeling, right? Usually your gut feeling is pretty good. Usually it's accurate. But sometimes you want some data, right? So this is a cool way you can now use all this. So let's go back to, actually we can just keep it here. Let's keep this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select lap 8. And what I'm going to do is actually let's select the fastest lap. So I have this sorted by fastest lap. So it's going to select the fastest lap for everything. And I'm not sure what is the 41.9. Yeah. So it shows you the fastest lap for that grouping. So we're going to select this. We're going to select this. We're going to select this. So now I can use this to compare, where our specific car is stronger. And I'm going to go to overview because at the bottom I can't see because my wheel's in the way. So now I can compare, these cars to one another and try to figure out, hey, where are these cars faster? Where are these cars a little bit slower? So again, the baseline is going to be it's the McLaren is the baseline. Lap 1 is the Mercedes, and lap 2 or session 3 is going to be the BMW. So the BMW is the green. So this one's really important to look at because look, I'm losing time in pretty much all these corners, right? Corner here I lost time, 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 corner here. Every corner on the BMW, I'm losing time. But look at the straights. I'm losing time on this straight. I'm losing time on this straight. A little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. There's, that decrease in line. So while I'm slower in the corners, I'm way faster in the straights. And, on a big grid at IMLA, that might be a really good feature to have because it's really hard to make passes at IMLA in the corners. It's, kind of tight. It's not a lot of good places to pass. Maybe I do want to be faster on the straight. Maybe I'm not as good in the corners. Maybe if I can just hold the corners, kind of block in the corners, I can gain more time being faster on the straights, right? Um, so this is definitely something to look at. Let's look at. I'm going to unselect the BMW. So now that we're just looking at the difference between the Mercedes and the McLaren. So the Mercedes is the one that the McLaren is the one that we have selected. I'm going to switch this real quick because I think it is easier to illustrate that point. Yeah, so this is good. So now I have the Mercedes as the one that is the baseline, and the McLaren that is the baseline lap. So you can see this Mercedes is losing time. Sorry, no, actually, yeah, here, this is a better one. So you can see, I'm basically gaining that time every place but the final chicane, right? That final chicane, um, actually, this is not a good lap. Speed demon must have made a mistake here. Let's go to lap 8 because I know. So let me show the 720 here versus here. Okay, yeah, here we go. So you can see, again, the Mercedes is pretty on pace, a little bit slower in sector one, about the same in, that after turn two. Um, but one thing that is, it's quicker at turn three, four. But one thing is, look, it's losing a lot of time in that final chicane. So if I look at the final the chicane here, you can see I shot up. So I lost, I went from being 2 tenths down to being almost a tenth up, or sorry, I was 2 tenths slower and to almost 2 tenths faster to almost being 1 tenth faster. So I lost 3 tenths in the final chicane, on in the Mercedes, in the McLaren compared to the Mercedes. Right, the Mercedes is super good over that final chicane. So again, this is kind of how you can use this to kind of look at the difference between cars if you're trying to figure out BOP, or you're trying to figure out what car you want to use to figure out what cars are good and what corners and things like that. And you really didn't have this capability with the old RST. You really need the ability to select mini laps, to these baseline laps. And if you like, I just selected a few laps from the McLaren. If you look, like you can see, like this is a good point for consistency, right? Speed Demon was losing all that time and pretty consistently losing time in that final chicane. Well, this one lap, he must have made a huge mistake in turn one, because he lost 6 tenths right here, right? And you can actually see the speed, like if we look at the speed trace, like this purple where he lost all that time, he had to get off the throttle here. You can see it. He had some oversteer. He tried to save it here. So that's like a consistency thing, right? So it's really good to like kind of catch errors and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much the update, guys, that I wanted to show to you guys. Let me look at the questions real quick. Um, One thing, the beta app is 100% faster than the older version. Yeah, Robert, we definitely made, so the reason this has taken us 3 or 4 months to do is we said, the old RST, we said, hey, we've added so much functions. The intent of this is kind of changed from when we first made it. We've just added these functionalities on top. If we were to do it all again, we would want to do it differently. Well, that's what this is. We pretty much redid the whole structure. We re-architectured everything so that we could do all these data labs. And we also tried to improve the performance as much as we can. So that's why you're seeing a difference here. Again, it's still, we need to add some more things before it can go to production, but we did want to make it available for you guys in the beta to get testing and things like that. um Flynn said life is too short to drive a BMW. Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I think Nils would agree with that too. I know he's just so frustrated with that car. And Speed Demon said, but games in the corner. Yeah, yeah, that's the cool thing with the new betas. You can totally use the total laps to see, where you're gaining against multiple cars, multiple, even setups, right? You could use this to see, hey, I might be quicker, but my consistency, I'm not always able to hit that lap. Whereas maybe if I make it a little bit more stable, I'm like a tenth slower, but I'm consistently hitting that, right? So it's really, really powerful to be able to select many laps. Flint said, "Is there an option to add corner numbers to the bottom line?" That's a good question. Not an option. It's something that we're gonna add. I don't know if it's gonna make it this big in this update though. It might be the next update after this one, guys. So we're making these beta updates. It's gonna go out. We're gonna implement any crashes or bug fixes that we need to do, and we're just gonna make optimizations. Once that goes out, that's gonna be the production version. The next release after that version, for the next beta that we're gonna do, is going to be auto annotations. So being able to, the program will come in here and come to maybe the differential and say, out for this orange one, hey, you're locking up, right? And add like a little flag, or just something to help you guys understand the data. I know the hard thing with this is you have to come in here and then you have to know from reading the manual, know what you're looking for. If we could add ways for the app to point you to what you should be looking at, I think that would be helpful. So that's one of the biggest things that we're going to be focusing on. But what you're asking about, Flynn, is something I would really like to add. Is basically, it be able to identify the corner and their number, and then maybe you could like have that on the bottom to like be able to say like turn one or something like that. But more importantly, what I also like as a drop down, so I could click on it and say turn one or turn two, so I don't have to keep like scrolling to it or zooming out and scrolling to it. So definitely something that we'll be adding. I don't think it'll make it in this version that gets put into production, but definitely probably the next. So Flint asked any info on the open dash function. So that's a good question. So for those of you guys that don't know, if you come to file, open dash, the reason it won't do anything for you guys, and the reason why is it does things if you have the hardware to do it. So let me grab it real quick. So you guys, oh my camera, something on the way out. So let me show it to you guys real quick. So if you guys can see this, you can see this dash. There's a screen, and then there's some like LEDs here on the side for like traction control and like wheel slip, and then some LEDs on the front here. We did software to get this dash working. This is actually the prototype version and actually works fully with RST. So I use it sometimes. I haven't been using it because it hides my screen. But the idea was we were going to work with the hardware manufacturer to make these, and then the RST was going to power it. We actually had it fully working. It was really cool. The side LEDs work and it has a cool dash and things like that. We had kind of an exclusive deal with the dealer. I'm not going to say the dealer's name because one, I don't want to promote his business. I think he's kind of a shitty guy. He randomly blocked me and kind of stole some of the source code we did for this. So kind of really upset with that deal. Unfortunately, unless I can find another person that is really good with hardware manufacturing that can design something like this, I have all the hardware components. So I know exactly what we need to do. I just need someone that has that experience. The dash is probably not going to get released. Unfortunately, that business deal just went completely south. The guy wanted to use SimHub and not make it RST exclusive, which is the whole point of us wanting to work with him. And we came up with the idea to do the dash. So unfortunately, it's not gonna be released. We'll probably take out the dash functionality from RST. If you guys know anyone that does hardware manufacturing, please send them my way. I would love to do and release this. We were trying to release this for like 250 to 300. We are really trying to come under the budget. But there was just the ways that RST does things versus some of the other manufacturers that are also in the sim racing industry. We don't always agree. I think the guy he actually did launch this using SimHub, and he's charging like $500, which I'm gonna tell you this is not $500 to make. Um, so just kind of take it for what it is. But yeah, that's what the dash is. That's what that's why it's not functionality. There's no documentation. We'll probably be removing it, to be honest. I hadn't removed it because I like to use it in my stuff, but yeah, it's probably gonna get removed. Carbon said any way that the graphs could be automatically resized for the max. Yeah, that's actually a good idea, Carbon. I was thinking about that when I was doing testing. I'll add a note. We'll try to get in this beta update because that is kind of annoying. The hard thing is knowing when the user wants to resize versus once the user wants to like stay zoomed in, right? Because sometimes it's nice to like stay zoomed in, and on the old RST you wouldn't be able to like select another lap, right? um it would just like add it. So I got to think about how to do that because I don't want it to zoom out if you're looking at this one corner and all you want to do is add another lap to like see that lap. I don't want it to like zoom out where you have to like zoom back in and like configure it. So I got to think about it a little bit. But I think there's a better way to at least like help, because what annoys me is when I go to from time distance to time, it does do that, right? And then like if I go from time to distance, it's like zoomed in. So I definitely want to fix that. But we just got to think of a clever way to do it. Actually, you guys can't see what I was showing. So I was just showing you with distance, like if you have zoomed in and I go from distance to like time, it'll zoom back out. And if I go back to distance, it zooms in. So I just want to get that fixed. So there's definitely some thought that's going to go into how we manage the zoom and things like that. Middle mouse click not used at the moment. Yeah, middle mouse is just for dragging. So it's a drag and hold to move X. So I don't know if you guys all know this. This is really important for people that are new. It's in the manual documentation, but I don't know if everyone's seen it on Discord. we have these controls broken out, right? So middle mouse button is for X axis. So if you want to, zoom in, or pan, you hold the middle mouse button, you drag. You can't go up or down on the Y, just left or right, right? So it's locked to the X axis. If you want to zoom in, it's middle mouse scroll, and it's only going to scroll the X axis, right? Not the Y axis. If you want to do just the Y axis, not the X, it's the opposite. So you hold down Control, and now no matter what you do, you're not going to change an X. If you want to pan on Y, you hold Control and the middle mouse button with Control. So it's Control, nothing, no modifier is X. Control is like the Y axis. And then if you want to do X and Y axis, you hold Shift. So if I do Shift, I can drag this anyway. I don't really like that because it's laggy because there's a lot of data. But what I like to do is if you hold Shift, you left click, you can draw like a little window, and that's gonna zoom everything to that window. So it's really nice if you're like in this and you're like, oh, I see the corner I want to look at. It's like right here. You you can do that, and it's gonna zoom into that corner, right? So just kind of some navigation. I know it should be in the documentation, but we don't have the document up the manual update yet. So hopefully that will come pretty soon. But I think that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in today. If you guys have any other questions, please let us know on the Discord. Again, if you're just tuning in, you don't know how to download the beta, check to the video after this post. At the beginning of the video, I kind of walk you guys through the setup process for the beta. But yeah, just give us the feedback. Try to get as much testing. You might experience crashes. That's what the whole beta is for us to get these crash reports so we can fix things before it goes into production. But if you have any questions, just let us know in the beta channel. If you like the channel, be sure to hit us up with a like or a dislike or a sub. Any kind of activity brings more people to the community, and all feedback is good feedback. But I hope you guys enjoy the new beta updates. I know this weekend's been crazy with the MLA setups, the RST website, and the RST update. I've been pretty much working around the clock these past 3 days. Andrew's been putting a lot of time in the past few days. Speed Demon put a ton of work for the setups. And Beldor's working on those manuals. So we really do appreciate you guys. We really love your support. But we hope you guys have a good weekend. And just let us know how you guys get on with the beta. I'm Zach from RST. Until then,